everyone. So glad to see everyone. I am Marvetta Coleman. I'm with the Children Matter Action Fund. The Children Matter Action Fund, or CMAF as I like to call it, because you all know we are very acronym rich in Pennsylvania, was formed earlier this year to focus on helping citizens to connect with lawmakers on critical issues affecting children across the Commonwealth. In particular, we are supporters of the Pre-K for PA, the Start Strong for PA, and the Childhood Begins at Home statewide campaigns. This is the fifth of at least 12 candidates conversations that we are holding with partners across the state. And interestingly enough, this time last Wednesday, we were kicking off the Candidates Conversation series in Allegheny County. So we have come somewhat full circle, except last week we had candidates from several of the House districts. We do know that this is a very important issue, not only to our candidates, but also to our audience, to our providers, to the multiple stakeholders from the business and community at large. And so we want to welcome you and we want to thank you for taking just some time out of your day to join this conversation. Certainly, we know that given the environment that we have been in since March, that it's not only important that we understand the need to look at high quality early education for our children, but also high quality childcare. And I think we have learned quite a bit about the fragility of the whole early learning education and childcare system through this process. So we certainly want to let our candidates know that from the standpoint of looking at this issue, it's so important to look at it not only in where we are now, but with a much longer lens to what is going to be the longer term strategy for supporting early learning, early learning education and childcare. I do want to let you know that all the candidates for Senate Districts 37 and 45 were invited to be a part of this conversation. And so we know that this is a particularly busy time in terms of the election cycle. And we want to give our thanks to those candidates who are joining us this evening. In addition to the information that you will hear from the candidates themselves, we're going to encourage you to go to our website, which is the don't use the word the, but childrenmatteractionfund.org, and take a look at the survey that some of the candidates have completed that we have posted. We also have what's called our Champions for Children pledge badge, and quite a few candidates have taken that pledge to be a champion for children. So we encourage you to take a look at the website and see if the candidate that you are supporting is also one that has signed on to be a champion for children. Couple of things, only the program participants, meaning the candidates, those who will be speaking on the program will be visible, but the chat box will be very much available for those who are on in the audience, and we encourage you to drop questions in. Our moderator will talk more about that, who I now actually want to turn to and introduce. Obviously, he's known to quite a few of you all, but wasn't known to me personally. But our moderator is Tom Baker, who serves as the county councilman for District 1 in Allegheny County. He has a history of serving and working with and on behalf of children. He has served on the North Hill School Board has been the Chief Community Affairs Officer and the Vice President of Programs for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Pittsburgh. I have to tell you, Tom, I was excited about that. I used to sit on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters in the Lehigh Valley. So I know what that work is like. Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome.
So he is also serves as the founder and chief program officer of Get Involved, which is a 501c3 public charity that educates and empowers young leaders. So without further ado, I want to turn the program over to Councilman Baker, better known to us this evening as Tom Baker.
That's right, your friend Tom, that works. Thanks, Marvetta, I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here with all of you. I've been psyched all day for this, just really pumped up, fired up to share with you and to hear from our candidates. Thank you for either being live with us right now or watching this back in the future. But we've got all we have the candidates from District 37 and 45 that'll be involved tonight. I think it's going to be a really good discussion. Early childhood education has been a big part of my life. My mom has spent the bulk of her career working in early childhood education. My dad was a teacher for the Pittsburgh Public Schools until he passed away in 1991. So I come from two educators. All my degrees are in education, and I am a previous and former child development center director, actually. Fun fact, I actually ran a daycare, a child development center called the Learning Ladder back in the day. So I have some experience in the field, and more importantly, these days are just I'm just a really supportive dad of our child development center where our daughter goes. Lila, I just picked her up literally 20 minutes ago from it. So appreciate you all being on. This is your official welcome. Thank you for joining us. It's hosted today by the CMAF, which Marvetta mentioned earlier, the Children Matter Action Fund, Helping Hands Childcare Learning Center with our friends Melissa Merritt. So we're glad to have them as the partners on this. As many of you know, research shows that 90% of brain development occurs within the first 5 years of a child's life. So what we're focusing on tonight is incredibly important to the future and development of kids and of future leaders in our region. During this critical period of growth and development, access to high quality early childhood education experiences like childcare, pre-K, and home visiting, they lead to positive long-term benefits. There's certainly been good strides, great strides in many ways in our region and in Pennsylvania, but there's always more to do and a ways to go. In our county, 48% of eligible children do not have access to publicly funded pre-K programs, and less than 67% of child care work subsidy eligible children under 5 are served. We also know that 2020 is 2020. This has been a year we will never forget in a lot of different ways. Hopefully a few positive, but I know a lot of them have not been so positive for many folks and many of us. And that is certainly true for the child care industry. It's already underfunded, already a fragile infrastructure within child care, and COVID certainly has played a role in that. I know our child development center was shut down for about 2.5 months during early COVID, and I think we're in many ways fortunate that we've been back up and running since June. Early learning programs have shouldered the burden of additional health and safety measures and costs while trying to serve children and families and keep staff employed and safe. And I will say that the look at our daycare, where we drop off Lila every day, is very, very different at drop off and pickup based on COVID. So tonight we're gonna learn from our candidates and our current state senator, Pam Iovino, that I overlap with legislatively. But all as Marvetta mentioned, all the candidates were invited, and we'll have some involvement from both races, both parties. This is a nonpartisan, bipartisan, just people that care about people kind of conversation here tonight. But we're glad to have Senator Iovino involved. We're glad to have Nicole Ziccarelli involved as well. So the goal for tonight is to facilitate a conversation about early childhood education so the voters in the districts, in the 37th and the 45th, can learn more about our candidates and where they stand on these incredibly important issues. Thank you to everyone that's registered to be a part of the event tonight or who will watch it back later. And I really do want to thank Marvetta of the CMAF, and of course, Melissa Merritt from Imperial, from the Helping Hands Childcare and Learning Center. So I know we've got Senator Iovino on, and I know we've got Nicole Ziccarelli. We might be joined as well by Hugh Baird and Emily Neff, and I've been chatting back and forth a little bit with the Robinson team earlier tonight. I know they sent their regrets. So We're going to have some provider opening remarks. And I should mention Hugh Baird, I see, is here now. So I see Senator Brewster's team will be represented. But we're going to turn it over now to Melissa for the provider opening remarks. So Melissa, again, I know we've done a lot of what's behind you on the left, not as much on the right. We've done some reading this year, but less traveling. I'm assuming that's travel on the right.
My Dr. Seuss signs.
Yeah, very good. Well, Melissa Merritt, thanks for all you do, and thank you for being our host tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Tom, and thanks Children Matter Action Fund for supporting and hosting this event. I'm just starting to get more into advocacy, and I'm really excited about it. I own Helping Hands Childcare. We're located in Imperial, which is about 2 miles from the airport, Pittsburgh International. So we're kind of a suburban childcare center. I've been in early childcare for 30 years, just about, and I've owned I started this business in 1999, so 21 years I've had my childcare center. I've been a huge proponent of the Keystone Stars program, which is the high quality accreditation, and I joined it before it was actually a requirement. And we've been a Star 4, which is the highest you can attain, for about 7 years. To keep that Star 4 accreditation, it's really tough because one of the requirements is like more than 50% of our staff have to have a certain amount of degrees, whether it be associate degrees, bachelor's degrees, et cetera. And that is extremely hard in our field to get quality early childcare educators to stay with us with the salary that I can pay them. And the move in advocacy for early childcare is really towards, we've been really trying for at least the last 10 years I can remember to get away from the word daycare and to get to the word childcare, because we're educators. So we always have to correct ourselves when we're saying daycare, because we're not babysitters, we're educators and we're caregivers. That's an important point I'd like to make. I do want to thank our government officials who are here, because after watching the debate last night, it's nice to talk civilly with people and know that people are here to educate ourselves and have a civil conversation. So I'm excited about that. One thing I'd like to talk with the COVID, responding to questions about COVID, we definitely changed a lot. I had 96 children in my facility before COVID in March. I've been full for a solid 7 years. We've had a wait list pretty much for 7 years. And I came back in May and I brought my entire staff back, which was 17 employees, and I came back with 24 kids. So it was really tough. I love my staff and I just couldn't, so I've taken a big hit doing that, but we're now up to about 55 children. So we're getting there, but we're still at 50% capacity. One of the big concerns I have is providing the quality care, and what I'd like to talk to people that are running for different offices is about how can our state start helping us with, either state or federally, start helping early childcare, because as Tom said, the children's development from birth to 5, it's proven scientifically, it's proven educationally, it's the largest growth development. So we need help to retain actual teachers. You know, we all love our teachers in our public school system. We support them with public funds. So somehow we need to start figuring out how we can also help early childcare with that. Because we can't charge parents anymore, or they literally aren't going to work. Their daycare bill is so high, and I'm not being able to keep staff who are with me 5, 6, 7 years, because they become so, it's a high cost to keep them at that point and they want to move on. So I'm interested in hearing what we can do to help bring educators into the early childcare field and keep them with maybe state and federal funding in some capacity. I think that's about it, but anything else?
I think that sounded great, Melissa. Thank you. And we hope you get back to full capacity at some point soon, you know, as the world changes. But thanks for all that you do. And, you know, it's interesting. We were married for 14 years before I became a dad. And I'll just say, you're right. People like me used to say the term daycare, and it really does change. Those are our educators. Those are our leaders. Those are the people that spend time with and educate the most important person in your life, your child. And it's really incredible. I will say Patrick Dowd caught me, probably a lot of you on this know Patrick Dowd from Allies for Children. I did say daycare about 2 years ago to him, and he just snapped at me, and I've never said daycare. So I apologize if it slips out every once in a while, but I certainly know that the Child Development Center that you serve with, that you run, that you work at, that's just incredibly important. So speaking of thought leaders in the region, Emily Neff is with us tonight of Trying Together. I don't know that there's a stronger leader in the region, certainly, than Trying Together when it comes to early childhood issues. So Emily is here. She's going to monitor the chat box and any raised hand features. So if anybody raises their hand, Emily will definitely let me know and let us know. But please make sure to send any questions throughout the night to me. We'll do that via private chat or text. Questions will be integrated into the conversation. So we'll have some good questions. We got questions ready for Nicole Ziccarelli, for Pam Ivino, for Mr. Baird, and we'll definitely make sure those questions get out there. Marvette is here too. She's got a leadership role. And at 30 seconds remaining, she's going to let everyone know that their time is coming to an end to answer these questions. I know Senator Ivino a little bit. I don't know Nicole quite as well, but we'll keep the answers moving. We'll keep them grooving. Hugh Baird, I don't know you either, so we'll keep the answers going so that we can hopefully get through all the questions here tonight. Melissa, I thought your point was a good one. It seems like a friendly group. We're all going to be kind to each other. This is a friendly space, so we'll all have just a nice positive conversation here together. In the spirit of who moderated exactly a week ago, as was mentioned earlier, it was actually Bill Eisler, who was formerly school board president of the city of Pittsburgh, but he was also formerly the CEO of the Fred Rogers Company. And in the spirit of Fred Rogers, this is a time where we're looking for the helpers, be the helpers, right? So people running for office and people that hold office are aspiring to be the helpers, right? To do good, to give back, to make a difference. That's what's running for office is really all about. So we're thankful to all those who run for office. As somebody that lost their first race, but has gone on to win the last 3 since, I will say, sometimes it doesn't work out the first time, but you just keep plugging away at it if you want to do good and to make a difference. So the same question will be posed to all the candidates and the representatives. And with that, I think we're actually going to get to our first question.
Tom, could I just jump in before we do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to ask Hugh Baird, I don't know if you can hear us, but I'm wondering if it would be possible for you to activate your camera, because we can't see you, and we'd love to have you on the screen. So we're not sure if you're having a problem with your camera, but our tech support person advises me that if so, if it is in fact a problem, you may want to log back out and log back in. But I see you've taken yourself off mute, so maybe it's that you can't show your camera.
Marvetta, thank you very much for having me on. I hope you can hear me. I'm having a number of technological issues throughout the evening here. 2 things. First of all, yes, my camera is malfunctioning. It hasn't been working. I don't know. I need somebody who is has greater tech savvy than me to repair that. So I think this is about the best I can do for that. Secondly, my chat box is now frozen as well. So I tried to respond to Dan about the camera and I was unable to do that. So just if Dan's listening, my chat box is frozen and my camera has malfunctioned, but it's wonderful to be here to share this evening with all of you. I hope just being here via audio, I'll be able to share some thoughts for Senator Brewster. I appreciate the fact of letting me step in for Senator Brewster this evening. He had a scheduled.
Okay, well, I don't want to steal from Tom's agenda. The thing I will add, though, is I am going to be Tom's silent partner in the sense that in a minute I'm going to mute myself. The protocol is 2 minutes for responding to the questions that are posed, and you will see the 30-second, and then you will see the wonderful red. That means it is probably about 5 seconds before we run out of time. So with that, I am going to go ahead into mute. Oh, one other thing. I know what view I have, but I don't know what view you have. So if you don't have us on gallery view or speaker view, You may want to change your setting up in the right corner up at the top so that you will be able to see me. Going away now. Back to you, Tom.
All right, thanks, Marvetta. All right, so thanks again, Marvetta. So we'll start right away with our first question. We'll go to Senator Iovino for our first question here tonight. COVID-19 has had a significant impact on early childcare and education providers and has also exposed the fragility of the childcare system. While many programs have opened, there are those that have closed and still others that are considering whether they can even remain open. Addressing the impact of COVID-19 on the infrastructure of early childcare and education is critical to families, businesses, and the state's overall operations as it relates to the thousands of employees who depend on these small businesses. What do you think, Senator Iovino, is important to help families and young children to operate effectively in this COVID-19 environment? We'll start with you, Senator Iovino, then we'll go to Nicole Ziccarelli.
There we go. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the invitation. I'm happy to be here this evening. COVID-19 has exposed many things that have existed prior to the virus in terms of disparity along economic lines, along lines of zip code. And so it's ripped back the curtain, and we were talking earlier about 2020 kind of being an anomaly, not part of the continuum of where we're going. But out of all of this bad, maybe some good things will happen. And I think there is an opportunity here for us to address some of those gaps and some of those disparities. Both the federal and state government are going to have to help. What we don't want are for these education centers to not exist at the other side of the pandemic. We're going to get through this, and they have to still be here for the reasons that have already been mentioned. Families depend on them, economies depend on them, our communities depend on them, our children depend on them, because this is the start of their formal education outside of their home. So we have to help them through financially. The public sector government has to help through so that they can exist at the other side of this. So I have co-sponsored the legislation that brought $100 million in CARES money specifically to early childhood education and our child care centers. Also, another $9 million of the CARES money went specifically to Head Start programs. More is needed. More is needed. There are times when the solving of the problem is about putting money to it, and that's what we need. And we need this to trickle down also from the federal government. We need that next HEROES Act or whatever it's going to be. We need that next $1 trillion+ coming from the federal government, and this is a priority.
Great. Thank you very much, Senator Iovino. Nicole Ziccarelli, we'll go to you next. What are your thoughts on the importance of helping families and young children to operate effectively during the COVID environment?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. It couldn't be nearer and dearer to my heart. I'm a mother of 4 young children, and I've had experiences with the most wonderful early learning centers with my children as a working mom. And so I'm a huge champion and proponent of what you do, Melissa, and I appreciate it. I also had the opportunity a few years ago to sit on the board of what was Pacey, which is now Trying Together, and just had such an amazing opportunity to learn there. I am always trying to learn more, and I appreciate and value so much what our early childhood providers do. And I think that Senator Iovino, hi, I don't think we've met before. It's very nice to meet you over Zoom, but you're correct. I think that we have seen a huge disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And when we know that so much, 90% of the brain development takes place between birth and 5, we have to do more. And I think that this is one of the issues that we can come together in a bipartisan way. But what we need to do first is prioritize early childhood education. And I think it's a shift of thinking that's critically important. We need to get everybody on the same page in that regard, and prioritizing it is the first step, in my opinion.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. And that's impressive. You have the Pacey former board members credentials here. That goes a long way. Very, very nice. So thanks, Nicole. We're going to go to Mr. Hugh Baird next. Mr. Baird, what are your thoughts on this question?
Thank you very much. Obviously, one of the things that we have to do is to understand the issues of what COVID has done to so many critical elements of our structure. Childcare services, the ability to provide care, the ability to provide the learning environment, and all those things have grown in appreciation. Obviously, even more so is the appreciation for those who work in the field. I mean, when the COVID struck and we started identifying essential workers and essential parts of our economy, they should be recognized for being the pillars, the elements that hold up our economics, that hold up our children, that as they go through learning. You know, one of the things about an economic recovery is finding a way, obviously, for quality childcare, and to have workers within that childcare system that are protected and with a greater amount of pay. They need the appreciation for those that are in the field needs to grow, and I think that has happened as a result of the COVID. I think there's a greater knowledge for what the childcare workers do within the scope of aiding children and providing opportunities for the economics to come back as we recover from the pandemic. So the pandemic has really scrambled a lot of things. One of the things it has done, it is uncovered a greater appreciation for those essential workers and those that are providing quality services and services for our children. So,
thank you very much, Hugh. Thanks for that answer. We'll move to our second question now. We'll start with Nicole Ziccarelli for this one, and I'm sure this is true for all three of you and for all of us on this meeting tonight. That we would all agree that early childhood staff are essential, and you just mentioned it, Hugh, and provide critical support for families and for children. However, the sector is plagued by low wages and high turnover of staff. United Way of Pennsylvania says that the average compensation for childcare workers is $9.74 per hour. I would say this on a personal level. Very, very often I see the people, the incredible human beings that take care of my daughter and spend time with my daughter and educate my daughter for 40 hours a week at Target, at Big Lots. They have second jobs just to make sure that they can pay their bills and live a good life, right? So they're working all the time. So we know that people are either having side jobs or just have to leave the sector to do a different profession. What are your ideas? And again, we'll start with Nicole Ziccarelli. What are your ideas about how to adequately compensate and to improve the retention of these incredibly qualified professionals that are educating our children in child development centers?
Right. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. We know that our early child care providers are certainly underpaid for what they do. They are heroes among us. And if I can just speak to personal experiences for a moment, I remember as a working mom with my first son, my son is going to be 10 in a couple weeks. And when I went back to work, I remember driving and dropping him off at a Bright Horizons Learning Center. It was wonderful in Plum. And I cried the whole way to the courthouse. And I remember the only thing that really got me through it were the wonderful people working at Bright Horizons that were texting me all day and contacting me and sending me pictures. And they're just lovely, lovely people. And they work so hard, and they really, truly are heroes. And they love our babies and our children like their own when we're not able to be there. And so I do think that we really need to take a look at that. One of the things that I'm most excited about is the Early Childhood Education Caucus in the Senate that Senator Brown created. And I certainly look forward to being a part of that and learning more about it. I will always come to the table. I will always be here for early childhood, and I will always come to our providers like Melissa and Trying Together like Emily, and make sure that I'm listening, and come to Marvetta and say, what are your thoughts? You are the boots on the ground. You know the best. Let me be the champion for you. But you are the best experts, and I will always be very cognizant of that.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. Hugh, we'll go to you next then. So what are your ideas, Mr. Baird, for how to adequately compensate and improve the retention for qualified professionals at these child care centers?
I think this gets down to, and excuse the clock ringing in the background. There's a gigantic clock here with a gong, so I apologize for that too. But there's two aspects I think that we need to understand. It gets down to two words: rates and wages. That's the reimbursement rates that providers receive, and the wages that they receive. We have a minimum wage that is in dire need of an increase. We have wages for childcare providers and workers in the field that need a boost. You simply at $9 an hour or $11 an hour or whatever the average rate is. I saw one report that it was $11 an hour. At that rate, again, it's too low. We need to increase wages for those that work in the field. We need to increase the ability of government to provide the necessary support so that facilities are able to pay their workers more. It's an important aspect of lifting wages of workers, quality of care, retention, the ability of workers to remain in those jobs and to grow with the children they're serving and to continue to provide the kind of quality service that they do. So it gets back to the two aspects, which is rates and wages. We need to ensure, at least as we go forward, that there's full funding for child care services in this budget, and that we look to identify other monies, maybe perhaps through additional federal subsidies and other help on the federal levels, for example, through as we saw in the CARES Act. So it's important to raise wages and raise rates.
All right, thanks, Hugh. Last but not least, we'll go to Senator Iovino. Senator, what are you thinking related to compensation and retention of child care professionals? The mute button is getting you.
You know what? It's because I'm not muting myself afterwards, so I forget that it has happened. I'd like to make a general comment with regard to compensation for educators pre-K through 12. This is a profession that the compensation does not reflect the value that it brings to a whole sector. So I just want to make that general comment, and then bring this back to early childhood and pre-K and child care. The next thing we know is that we are using data more and more. Big data is part of our vernacular now, and we can archive it, we can warehouse it, we can go back then and sort it and use it specifically for decision making. And one of the things that big data has points out to us is that when there is quality pre-K and early childhood, where the third grader benchmarks, who has had benefit of that, he's surpassing. It's showing up by the time they're in third grade. But more importantly, that child continues to excel all the way through their education, whereas the child who did not have benefit from it lags behind. Data driven, we know this. So that brings us down to what I think is, it's a value thing that we have to address and tackle here, and that is that the compensation, the salaries for these professionals is a mismatch from the importance and what they are bringing to an industry, and what's more important than educating our children. So that compensation is not reflecting the importance of what they do. It is not reflecting the level of education and the time they've spent preparing to be able to do this job. And it is a disconnect that we have to address both legislatively, but we have to do it almost on a PR level or on a value-driven level.
Okay, thank you, Senator. For a third question, so we talked about hourly wages, rates for the incredible professionals working in the field. Next, we're going to go to the state budget. And last year, there were roughly, it was pre-COVID, there were about 25,000 students involved in high quality state-funded pre-K. The number stands in stark contrast to the nearly 102,000 children that are eligible in rural, suburban, and urban communities throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Without that, we're not, don't have access to high quality publicly funded programs. So Hugh, we'll start with you this time, but for all three candidates and representatives, what are your thoughts on the importance of high quality early learning education for our children, and how can Pennsylvania significantly increase funding opportunities for families and these early learners? So this one really gets down to funding and how can we help with funding for on behalf of the state for these early learners. Hugh Baird, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much. Just a little bit of context here. I'm old enough and have been around long enough to remember when Governor Rendell made a really significant commitment to investing in pre-K and kindergarten and Head Start and services and that type. I think one of the things that happened back then was that there was an education process about the extreme value of investing in children and investing in quality education at the pre-K level and early childhood level. You see that and it's the evidence is clear. You see that in better students, better workers, more productive workers, less social issues as they're coming forward. So to get back to the main question that you asked, there needs to be a commitment. For example, we worked on a budget this year. It's 5/12 of the budget. That has to go back and at least have full funding for the year, much in the same way that pre-K and some of the education programs have been funded. We need to again gather some more federal dollars and put them with state dollars and make childcare and pre-K and those programs a priority going forward. That's one of the things that you do. I mean, budgets are priorities. It's a statement of priorities. And I think that's one of the things that we can do is recognize that childcare, the quality of those that work in the field, the importance of the investment in children for not only tomorrow, but for well into the future is critical. So we have to make that a priority. We have to gather more federal money. We have to cobble that together with the state and ensure that those monies are earmarked and targeted so that they're very effectively put in for the benefit of our children.
Great. Thank you very much, Hugh. Next, we'll go to the Senator. Senator Pam Ivina, what are your thoughts on funding within the state budget?
Well, I'm going to echo one of the things that Hugh said, which is that if you want to understand the priorities of an entity, private sector, public sector, nonprofit sector, study their budget, and you'll know where their priorities lie. So I think that adage is absolutely correct. This budget is going to be a challenge year. I mean, we did fund education for the whole 12 months. And it was the only department we did that with so that they had some amount of continuity or surety of what they were dealing with. But every other department in this Commonwealth is at a 5/12 funding level. I think that there was a very, very contentious issue in the legislature this last year when we made education mandatory starting at age 6 in the Commonwealth. It was age 8, and I'm talking to a screen full of educators, so I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. But I will candidly admit that I thought it was age 6 in the state because that's when I thought everybody had to start at first grade. So I was a little shocked and even dismayed when I realized that it was only 8. And it became a very emotional conversation and maybe even a little bit more partisan than I would have expected or certainly would have wanted, that we were taking decisions out of parents' hands about when was the appropriate time to send their child to school. But I think driving down even earlier than age 6 is how we is another conversation And I don't know where I land on it yet, in all candor. I don't know what I think in terms of where I think it should be legislated or mandated, what that age is. But going back to something I said, responding to the earlier question, when the data proves that the earlier the child has quality early pre-K education, their outcomes for the remainder of their, not just their education, but their lives, is enough of a starting point for me to get behind saying we need to start earlier than even age 6.
Thanks, Senator. We'll go to Nicole Ciccarelli next.
Thank you, Tom. I think in full disclosure, this would be a good time just to give everyone a bit of context about me. I grew up, my mother is a public educator, has been in public education her whole life. She taught elementary school children in McKeesport Area School District, was the building principal there at an elementary school, and is now over at the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. She's an assistant executive director, specifically for early childhood. And so my mom is Dr. Catherine Lobaugh, just in case anyone hasn't connected those dots. And she is the most fierce advocate for early learning. And that has been a part of who I am and how I have become the person that I am since I was a child. And so I'm so grateful for her for instilling all of these values in me. And she always tells me, the better the start, the stronger the finish. So I couldn't agree more that I think we need to start as early as we possibly can. And when you're looking at Pennsylvania's roughly $33 billion budget, it comes back to what I said in my first response, which is prioritize. We have to start looking at this as a #1 issue for us. And it really is bipartisan. We really can work together. When I'm looking at this wonderful document that I was sent today in preparation for this, for Early Learning Pennsylvania briefing book, it was just excellent. And I'm looking at the top 3 states per capita, their investment rankings are New Jersey, Georgia, and West Virginia. And leadership in the Democrat and Republican Party are in charge in all 3 of those states. So this is really something we can come together and do, and we have to do it. We have to prioritize early childhood, and we have to find a way to help our children from the very, very beginning.
All right, thanks, Nicole. And I did not put that together about your mom, so that is helpful information. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so we're halfway through. We're doing really well. We're really moving along. So I think we might be able to get through all of our questions here tonight. We just have 3 more left, and then once we do these 3 questions, we'll give each candidate a 1-minute wrap up. But let's take this directly to childcare, which serves children under 3, those who can't enroll in pre-K due to lack of state funding, or those who attend childcare after school until their parents come home from work. Prior to COVID, the need for high-quality childcare outweighed the supply and the number of childcare workers, and that's declined over the last 5 years. As you know, the state's Childcare Works, that program helps working families defray the cost of childcare. However, the state's subsidy rates do not cover the cost of high-quality care. What measure would the 3 of you, or are you, support to address this gap in payment and the shortage of access to childcare for working families, especially for the babies and the toddlers, for the infants and the toddlers? So, Senator, you might have the most current experience with that. What are you doing, or what could we do to address the gap in payment and shortage of access?
Mm-hmm. This is a great program, this Childcare Works, and unfortunately, it doesn't fully provide for that gap. Because here's another reality, and this was not the reality of my first 5 years, where there was generally a parent at home and a parent that went to work. But now it is far more common that either both parents work outside of the home, or it's a single parent household. So the need for childcare has grown exponentially over the last couple decades, and it needs to be high quality. And it is oftentimes, after a mortgage, one of the largest chunks of a family's budget that they're trying to accommodate and build into. And one of the most important investments that they're making, because that's what they're doing. They're investing in their child's education. So I would like us to be able to find more money at the federal and state level to be able to do that. But I think and some employers are doing it, but we need to look for more opportunities where we can bring and to be part of the formula employers and corporations, and whether we do that by incentivizing it for them in ways of tax credits, but I think there's another that's a really significant sector that is part of the answer and part of the funding piece of this, that and quite frankly, it benefits them. You have an employee who is not worried or burdened about the safe, quality care that their child is in while they're at work. You have a better employee, more productive, and it's a safer work environment and all of those things. So I think that's, you know, to keep saying that, you know, throwing money is the way to solve a problem, I think we need to bring more stakeholders to the table.
Thanks, Senator. We'll go next to Nicole Ziccarelli. I think I got us out of the rotation there, but we'll go back to Nicole next.
That's quite all right. When I was speaking before about my experience at a Bright Horizons, that Bright Horizons Center was through Philips. And so that was a private company that had a childcare facility for their workers. Now, I didn't work at Philips, nor did my husband, but they had a couple slots available to community members. We were able to go there. And it was really an amazing thing to be a part of, because a lot of the parents that worked at Philips could come over at lunchtime and spend time with their children. They had a nurse there with a sick room, so that if the child was sick, the parents could still go to work. And that's a very, you know, probably unique situation. I also had experience with my children at the Goddard School. Also, all of them have gone to wonderful early learning centers for preschool. So I understand what that experience is all about. When it comes to costs, by the time we had our fourth, we said, oh my gosh, we can't afford to have them all in a quality early learning program. And that was a really difficult decision. Where are we going to cut back? Some people have a far greater, more difficult decision to make. And we've just got to make sure that we have quality early learning available for our babies, because again, we need that strong finish for them. And in order to establish those building blocks, we've got to do it as soon as possible. And so I do think that we have to look at private industry as well and hope that they can lead the way, and that we need to do more at a state level and federal level to prioritize our early learners and our early learning centers.
Great. Thank you very much, Nicole. Hugh, we'll go for you next. What would you do with regards to this issue? And you're just thinking about the funding coming that maybe Senator Brewster is working on when it comes to childcare works within the state government.
Well, when we go back to the issue here, there's a couple things to identify about the Child Care Works program. First of all, it's innovative, and it is something where there was a recognized need, a problem that was identified, and folks got together and worked collaboratively to come up with a way to provide, you know, child care services for those most in need. We do that through a couple ways. One is a commitment, both on the federal and state level, that this kind of program, this kind of innovation is effective, but it's not alone. There's other aspects to it. For example, as was mentioned, in the private sector, incentivizing the private sector to begin childcare or work with local childcare providers, again, through the innovation, again, working collaboratively at the local level. The bottom line, though, is that it comes down to identifying resources and using innovations in order to provide necessary services. There is absolutely no question that quality childcare is an effective way of not only helping children, but providing for economic resurgence. And for those that are involved in the program, the fact that it's means tested means that as they're reaching out, as they're going back to work, it's meeting a need. So there's people there that have to go out to work, that provide and with the necessity of finding quality childcare. And the program like Child Care Works is an effective way of delivering effective services.
Great. Thank you, Hugh. And I have to be honest, from all three of you, I just learned a lot about the issue and about Child Care Works in general. So I appreciate the content from all three of you. Next, we're going to get into my mom's recent profession until she just retired a few months back, but home visits, going to visit children in their home, provide services, provide skills for them, helping them with their education, just all the different things that you do during home visits. My mom would pack up her car every morning and just go from visit to visit to visit to help kids out in Westmoreland County. Home visiting has been shown to have positive lifelong impacts for vulnerable families and to aid in developing relationships with families that increase positive family outcomes. I know a lot of times my mom was considered like extended family to these families that were so welcoming and warm and let her in. Children at risk of child abuse and neglect, or who live in poverty or experience poor education and health outcomes, they stand to benefit the most from these services, from these support services of home visits. Currently, only 2% of all children under 6 and only 5% of low-income kids under 6 are receiving these critical services. So we'll start with Nicole for this one, but if all three of you can just share with us what you know about the home visit programs that we have in the Commonwealth, or specifically in your legislative districts, and how you think they could be expanded, or should there be less? Kind of just what you think in general of home visits, and how we could support those for families and for children. And we'll start with you, Nicole Ciccarelli.
I think that we know that evidence-based home visit services are critically important. There's absolutely no doubt about it. They are exactly what we need for so many of our at-risk children. I think that the other thing we have to remember when we talk about this is that the parents are our children's first teachers. And so being able to have these evidence-based home visits so early on is so critically important for some of our parents who really need it, so that they can be the best parents that they can be. So I 100% agree with you, Tom. I think it's critically important. Very proud of the work that all of our home visit specialists do. And that's wonderful that your mom did that. I'm sure that she was beloved in her community and will be missed now that she's retired. But I think it's critically important and our parents need it. My mom always used to tell me that you are your child, even though you're not a teacher, Nicole, you are their first teacher. And the work you do with them at such a young age is going to be the most important work of your life. So if we can do more to support parents that need it, we need to step up and do it.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. We have to find a way for your mom to be able to watch you in this debate or this forum as well, too, because I'm sure she'd be really happy to hear the good words that you're sharing about her work. And just, yeah, and my mom, I'm surprised my mom didn't log in. Emily Neff, I should have sent her the link. I apologize, but I'll make sure she gets to see this played back. So Hugh Baird, what are you thinking with regards to home visits and kind of where the Senator Brewster stands on these issues?
I think Senator Brewster and others in the General Assembly and have supported these types of programs in the past. You have a number of different facets of the services that are available, and they're critical services that are available. You have people who are being served by home visits, who often are they're a bridge to the services that are available. For example, nursing services, or that's one aspect of it, the community-based services that are available. But the critical aspect of that is, again, it goes back to commitment. Is there a commitment on the part of the folks that are identifying budget items to provide more funding for the further development of home visitation services, home-based services? And that's a critical part of what we do in terms of the General Assembly, and identifying this as a focus going forward in a valuable program. So it goes back once again to identifying not only in the state level, but I know that there's been some action on the federal level with some federal money that has been made available to provide some of these services. My understanding is that there's a program that's working in all the counties, so it's a valuable thing. It's across the board. It has broad support. That's an identity. It has its own identity, and something that can be the focus of funding going forward.
Thanks, Mr. Baird. Senator Iovino will go to you last on this issue of home visiting. Thank
you. I could reiterate what my fellow participants say, because I agree with everything that has already been said, and I just want to bring in one more point to this great conversation and discussion is that what they do is they take care of barriers oftentimes that family may not have, access via whether it's resources, financial, transportation, time, awareness of programs. And so rather than the burden being on a family that's already challenged, food insecurity, financial insecurity, it brings it to their door. It brings it to their door. So now all of a sudden that they have the awareness of it, they have access to it. And so it's no wonder that these saviors, these angels, become like family to them, because that's what it represents and that's what it means. So it's evidence-based that it's proven. And when we do that, the most important word I think in this whole conversation was in this, Tom, in the setup to the question, and that is vulnerable. They're vulnerable. So when we have an awareness of that and we have an opportunity to do something for it, that's what, that's who we are, that's who we want to be as a Commonwealth. That's who we want to be as people in a community, to take care of that vulnerability by in this case, taking care of a barrier that a family might have to take care of themselves to the best of their ability.
Great. Thank you very much, Senator, and thanks as well to Nicole and Hugh. We're 5/6 of the way through. This is our final question here tonight. Hugh Baird, we'll actually start with you first on this one. But, as folks are thinking about bringing their companies to Western Pennsylvania, to the 37th or to the 45th district, as employees are thinking about where to locate and where to live, obviously having childcare is a big part of that decision-making process. A recently released state report by the Keystone Economic Development and Workforce Command Center emphasized that access to and availability of childcare providers are two major challenges for employees and job seekers. It's particularly important when these companies are considering expanding, growing, developing, bringing more jobs to Western Pennsylvania, which I know is incredibly important to all of you at the state Senate level, all of us in the county level. It's incredibly important, of course. The report also spoke to the need for childcare and I did not think of this honestly until I thought about the questions for this evening. It also focused on the need for childcare on weekends and for second and third shift. Definitely important as well. So Hugh, we'll start with you, but can you share a little bit about how it relates to bringing jobs here, or even just the economic growth in our region, how childcare access relates to those issues?
Well, thank you very much. This is obviously one of the things that companies look for, and those that are making investments are willing to make investments and grow jobs and create industry and bring a focus back relative to recruiting businesses and industry here, is a variety of aspects that are important to business. So is it the tax structure? Is it the workforce, the quality of education that's provided, the quality of childcare? That is one of the key underpinning elements in terms of that goes into the decision structure of businesses. There have been a number of studies, and one you pointed out and others that talk about childcare, talk about those things, and quality of life issues are extremely important to businesses when they make relocation decisions. And in a lot of ways, because they have to again go back to recruiting quality workers, and Western Pennsylvania has the greatest workers in the world, with the greatest people available, high quality schools, wonderful attributes, local officials that are willing to work with the companies in terms of providing opportunities for those businesses. A key element of that is that childcare opportunities be available for the workforce. And especially if you're growing the workforce and the workforce is going to grow, you have to have an ability to be flexible to handle the needs of all your workers. So it's an incredibly important element in terms of the mix and the structure of a package that you put together. That's why when we were talking about in terms of investments in education at the state level and at the federal level and gathering those monies, that those are applied adequately. Those are applied in the field. Those are applied to provide the opportunities for businesses, for workers to have childcare opportunities and be part of an economic resurgence.
Thank you very much, Hugh. We'll go to Senator Iovino next.
The question was framed to, to talk about the impact across the Commonwealth, but in that we're talking about the 37th and the 45th districts, I want to just bring it, right in here to Allegheny, Westmoreland County for a minute, because we are so attractive to both businesses that want to come and settle here, and then the professional who gets recruited to work here because of many things that you already just rattled off, whether it's the cost of housing, the quality of education, the higher education availability, the arts, the recreation, et cetera, et cetera. We're very, very attractive. But this piece of it about childcare and early education, this is going to be added to the list. And what I would like to what I'd like to bring up, and it has been stated, what we have to do is that we have to do a better job recruiting, retaining, and compensating the professional in this field so that we keep them and we don't see a turnover rate, because that is detrimental to this sector of the economy, this sector of the specific sector of education. And so I think that's these are critical elements to an economy now, and very much to your point with regard to that it's not a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday need anymore either. That's not the economy we live in, so we need to address that piece of it as well.
Great, thank you, Senator. Nicole, how about for you? What are your thoughts on economic growth in the region and how childcare access relates to it?
Well, I just want to say I completely agree with you that we have the greatest workers and people in the world here in Western Pennsylvania. And one of the things that we focused on so far in my campaign is shining a light across our district on our business community. And I think it's so critically important to do that. The private business sector can lead the way for us in a lot of different avenues, but working together with the early childhood community can be a great way for Pennsylvania to surge ahead and be a leader nationally in this regard. And I will say that that also, the more we attract business and incentivize business to be here and talk to them about why this early childhood component could be such a huge avenue and for growth for them, we increase our tax base as they come. And then what that does is give us more money to work with at the state level that we can allocate to what our priorities are, which needs to be early childhood education. So I think that that is a critical component to it. And I will say that a lot of the women, and I say women because they were all women that were at my children's early learning centers, are still there. Most of them, maybe one or two of them are there. And I stay in touch with them and talk to them quite frequently about what they're going through and appreciate the work that they've done. And I know we can do better for sure. And the reason I know they're still there is because they love our children and they really are committed to what they do, but we've got to do better for them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, and you're right. I'm not even sure if they're supposed to be texting us during the day with pictures of our kids, but it does make a big difference when nice little updates come throughout the day every once in a while from our child care providers. So I was just allotted 1 extra minute for a fun question before we get to your wrap up. So I promise it's not a gotcha question or anything like that, but I was allotted an extra minute. So this is a fun one. I need everyone to think back to when they were a kid. We do this at Big Brothers Big Sisters all the time. We say think back to being 6 to 13. What were your favorite activities? Who was a role model? Well, let's talk about learning. So what I need to know is your favorite book as a child that you learned from, or favorite TV show that you felt like you learned something as well too. Just some thoughts that Mr. Rogers, obviously, fun things like the Care Bears, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Berenstain Bears, a lot of bears on here. Anything about sports, anything by Judy Blume. Those are some of my examples of possible answers here. So Nicole, we'll start with you first. Thinking back to when you were, and we'll go like 3, 4, 5-ish. What was one of your favorite books or one of your favorite TV shows back in the day?
Well, I loved Corduroy. I don't know why I fell in love with this story, but everything about it was magical to me. And my mom was very animated reader, so she had me loving reading from a very, very young age, but that was one of my absolute favorites. And what I've noticed now as my children are getting a little older, my youngest is 5, so they're still very young. I have My youngest is 5. I have twins who are 8, and my son is just about to be 10. And now they're starting to watch the things that we grew up watching, Tom, which is just fascinating. And I love it. And they've been watching Full House lately. And so I remember the episodes, and they think it's quite funny that we're Greek and that they're, Uncle Jesse is Greek. So they love that. And I think it's funny to kind of go backwards. But I also share your love of Mr. Rogers. And I love that my children watch the original Mr. Rogers Neighborhood, and they never tire of it. And he was just so magical. And I will say one thing that's not exactly related to your question, but I had the opportunity to do the Walt Disney World College program when I was at Penn State University, and I worked on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in the Magic Kingdom. And there's nothing more magical than that. And the best part of my day is when it would print out a ticket, and instead of having me go to a certain part of the ride, it would say, make a magical moment for one of your guests. And the best thing in the world was to go out in the park and find a child who really needed to have a magical moment that day and get them an ice cream cone or whatever it was. But children are just very near and dear to my heart. I love being a mom, and I've loved all of my experiences with our kids, and we all need to step up and do more because they need us.
Thanks, Nicole. Big Disney, yeah, that's awesome. That's very fun about Disney too. Hugh, how about you? I don't know, Hugh, you can answer on behalf of the Senator Brewster, or if you just want to share your favorite book. Either one's okay, Hugh.
Well, this will tell you how old I am. My favorite book growing up, and when I was very young, was Curious George.
Yeah.
And Curious George is a book. Now I'm the youngest of 4, and I have an older brother. So by the time the book got to me, it was passed down. It wasn't in great shape, and my older brother, every time he saw me reading it, would make sure it was knocked out of my hand, so the pages were ripped. But part of that was one thing that my mother did. She noticed that I was reading the book and following along with it, and really liked it as being very young. And I remember after my brother had knocked the book out and ripped several pages, my mother took it and taped it back up again, taped it real tight, and gave it to me. It was a wonderful gift that I always appreciated, and I've told my children that as well. So Curious George, I think, is a book that I will always remember. It's ingrained in my it's ingrained in me. It's something I dearly like, and I recall as a child.
Awesome. Thanks, Hugh. Yeah, that's a great pick. Senator Iovino, we gave you the most time. Any thoughts on your favorite book or TV show?
And actually, it didn't. The book immediately popped into my head, and I think it actually might make a top 10 favorite for me. And that was, and I'll date myself and put myself right in the same demographic with you, Hugh. But my favorite book was Charlotte's Web. And it was just, it was charming, and, had empathy and dilemmas and loss, and just, between Fern and Charlotte and Wilbur. And I just, I still love the book. So that was it immediately popped into my head. I'm going to have 2 answers on television. And I obviously grew up in the era of Mr. Rogers. I mean, they were original runs when I was watching them. And I was just wrapped by his voice, by his cadence, by his stories, his lessons, just all of it. But my other favorite television memory is the other side of the spectrum, and that is Saturday morning cartoons. And they don't resemble anything like what is probably Saturday morning cartoons right now, but they were Tom and Jerry and Top Cat, and actually Curious George was one of them. And but Saturday morning cartoons. Awesome
answers by all 3 of you. I don't know, I just thought that would give us a little perspective, maybe a little levity too. It's fun to talk about being a kid for a child, for all of us, and appreciate all 3 of your thoughtful answers. I thought you might literally say like 3 words each on that one, so you really all 3 of you took it very seriously, which I appreciate too, and gave very thorough, thoughtful answers. So I thank you very much. Thank you very much for doing that. So we're going to do 1-minute wrap-ups now. So again, in leading up to this wrap-up, it's been a very thoughtful conversation, very kind conversation, and I definitely appreciate all 3 of you for that. Well, Senator Iovino, we'll start with you first. If you just want to provide a little wrap-up statement in a minute or less.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody that participated this evening. I love forums like this. I love dialogue. I ran on my experience working in Congress, working at in the legislative branch of government at the federal level, and said what I learned there was that to make good policy, you needed to have all the stakeholders around the table. And that's what this is reminding me of, is that it's about having all the stakeholders around the table. I thank you for the opportunity for those who have dialed in to hear a little bit about my positions and where I stand. But I think the thing I am most grateful for out of all of this, and it is whenever there is a forum or a dialogue and people around a table, is what I learned from all of you, starting with the provider leaders that kicked off the event this evening, from my fellow participants and what they had to share, and from the questions that were posed, that I've coming away from this, I believe, with as much, if not more than maybe I contributed to it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator. And you're right. I think we've all learned new things tonight, new positive things, which is always good and helpful. Nicole Zeccarelli, any closing thoughts from you?
Well, Councilman Baker, I was remiss in saying this at the beginning of this evening, but I understand that you're not seeking another term on council, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank you so much for all of the work that you've done. You will be missed, and I know we will still see you all over the place. You're not going far, right? You're not going. Thank you very much, and good luck in your future endeavors. I think that what I really want the early childhood community to understand is that I don't want to just vote for you when you need me. I want to be out there fighting with you. I want to know what you need, and I want to be a champion for you because I believe in what you do so wholeheartedly, as a young mom and as a daughter of somebody who believes so passionately in your work. So please understand that. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor to be here this evening. And thank you for all of the work and preparation that went into getting this together. I know that there's a lot that goes into it, and sometimes you don't get thanked. And I want to make sure that I take the time to do that. Thank you to everybody who's been involved in the panel and anyone who's been listening. I appreciate it. I very much appreciate the opportunity and look forward to hopefully fighting for you in the future.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Nicole. And how about for you, Hugh Baird? Any closing comments from yourself or on behalf of Senator Brewster?
Yes, thank you very much. Just as a couple things to Senator Brewster, talking a little bit about his commitment. He's trained as an educator. His 3 daughters were elementary school teachers. 2 of them continue to teach in the schools. There is a passion and a commitment to help children. He serves on the School Safety Commission that provides funding and resources to help schools as they get through this. And as you know, just want to thank everybody who participated this evening. I want to thank those that have put this together. It's been an excellent evening. We've learned a great deal about issues that are important to the child care community, and we've learned a little bit about each other, and that's a wonderful thing. You know, the thing about COVID is, and what it's done is it has really scrambled how we look at things. But just to get back to what Senator Iovino said, one of the things that perhaps that will come out of this is a greater appreciation for those things that we often just take as a part of our life. So in terms of the appreciation for child care workers, those that are in the field, the professionals that are in early childhood education, and those who make a commitment to help our children and to help our communities, that's something that we can take out of the experience that COVID has resulted from COVID. So I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to stand in for Senator Brewster. I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Excellent. Thanks, Hugh. What a kind conversation. What a kind discussion. Again, thanks to all of those that organized this event, Helping Hands, and also the CMAP, the Children Matter Action Fund. Before I turn it back to Marvetta for her closing comments, I just wanted to say thanks again to our candidates and to Hugh as well on behalf of Senator Brewster. Nicole, it was wonderful to get to know you through the evening. I'm sure for both you and I, and also Senator Iovino and I, we spent probably tens of hours, dozens of hours together this year, probably in in a different world, but definitely appreciate your willingness to serve, your willingness to run for both of you. It's not easy, it's grueling, it's hard. I hope that at some point tonight, all of you forgot that you were candidates and just kind of got into a conversation among friends. That's kind of how and maybe I was head nodding too much for everyone, but I really did feel very comfortable in your words and inspired by your words by everyone that shared here tonight. So again, thanks for the opportunity. My mom's very proud of me for being part of this event. So Emily and Marvetta and thank you for making this possible. And Nicole, our mom's, I'm sure, very proud right now. So that is never a bad thing. So with that, we're going to turn it back to Marvetta for some closing comments. After Marvetta's done, I am going to read a book to a 2.5-year-old to close out the evening before she goes down to bed at 7:30. So Marvetta, thanks for your leadership and thanks for the invite to all of us here tonight.
I really want to thank you. You have really created kind of a centering for this conversation this evening. So thank you so much. And I had no idea about your moving into a new phase. So congratulations with respect to those next steps. I do want to thank all of our candidates that joined us this evening, our lead provider, our other members of the audience, and certainly our partners in this work, because this work is coalition work. And while we did not mention it earlier, I would just, stress, visit the Children Matter Action Fund website just to get a sense of the breadth of some of the work. The other thing I would really encourage is, if you haven't yet completed the survey or taken the pledge, go to the website and take a look at it. I think you'll find that with respect to the issue of early learning education and our children, that information is really valuable for folks to, really be able to perhaps see more of you when they don't have an opportunity to talk with you. The other thing I would add is that we will be posting this candidates conversation on the Children Matter Action Fund YouTube channel. And we expect probably for those to go up at some point next week. So I will make sure, certainly for our candidates, as well as our other program participants, that we send you an alert when that is up so that you are aware. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we did extend an invitation to all of the candidates for Senate Districts 37 and 45. And we thank you for being with us and continue to be a champion for children. Children are nonpartisan, and we need to be a champion for all of them. Lastly, I'm sure that those that have been on the panel probably have heard this more than 10 times, and even those in our audience, but please, please, please make sure that you have a plan for voting and that you exercise your right to vote. We want to thank you for being with us this evening, and have a very good evening. And Tom, you go and enjoy that time with that little one. And by the way, I thought that your fun question was inspired. It allowed us all to go back and visit that time when we were those little people. And I think we could do more of that. Take care, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well
Good night,
said.
everybody. Stay
Good
safe.
night.
Thanks, everybody.